What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Pro vs. Pro. This should be a fun show. We're going to start with some Taylor Moore. We're going to get into our personal experiences with match play and our unique insights into this week. But man, it's all about Taylor Moore right now, isn't it? What a fun win.
Yeah, he's a great story, great kid. I mean, I played with him. I think it had to be his first or second year out. So, I mean, the eye test was there, like I told you earlier, and it was fun to watch him win. And I know you want to talk about the bunker shot he hit. So,
dude, that bunker shot was unbelievable. But for anyone who's not sure, we're talking about the one on 17, long bunker shot. He takes a close stance, flies it all the way to the back shelf, spins it to like a foot. And I immediately texted Justin, that was pure filth out of the bunker from Taylor right there. And the thing is, like, from a DFS perspective this week, I should have had a phenomenal week. I had 3 missed cuts by a combined 4 strokes, one of whom was because Brian Harman, trying to hit that same type of shot, bladed it way over the green and ends up making a quad because he then like had a panic attack in the rough or something after that. But it just shows, like, in that pressure, that moment, such a difficult bunker shot, that was phenomenal.
Yeah, he works with Josh Gregory, who, when I was still playing, I worked with a lot short game stuff. Really, really, really good short game instructor. He's at Merida, where a lot of the tour players practice. You know, it's where like Zalatoris is all the time, and all that. So he works with a lot of good players. And as soon as he hit that shot, I wasn't even in the country, and I made sure I could get some insight into it and talk to people about it. So I'm not surprised by it. You feel like you see players play and the moment's too big, and I never got that feeling from him. He just doesn't have he doesn't have that personality to where, he gets in a moment, gets scared of it. So I think that it was just a matter of time. I'm glad you got it to happen on your week. So
yeah. I mean, honestly, like we could talk the entire show about what he did well all weekend, all week. I think 2 things really stood out to me. First of all, both times that he failed to birdie the scoreable par 5 on the back 9, he immediately responded by hitting one tight and making birdie on a fairly difficult hole. He did it on 12, and he did it again on 15. I think that said a lot. And then the other one is 64 of 64 or whatever he was from inside 7 feet, which is a stupid stat, by the way, because you never know how many of those are tap-ins. But certainly a lot of those were difficult putts that most of the field was missing at a fairly high rate. And he was perfect inside 7 feet. That's just awesome.
And it's funny you say that, because that's the putting stat that I preach, right? You can, in my opinion, throw a lot of the other stats of putting away. If you're making all your putts inside 5 to 7 feet, that's how you win golf tournaments instead of finish 25th. He easily could have missed 5 of those and just, knocks him down outside the top 20. So it's just that's the most predictable putting is, you don't make that many getting lucky, right? You're not hitting so putts and them not going in. I mean, that's pretty incredible stat. But
that's what I was about to say. Like, from a data side of things, I agree completely that those are the putts that matter the most, because those are the putts that you're most in control of the outcome on. Like, if you're missing a 15-footer, it doesn't mean that you didn't hit a great putt with a really solid read, good speed. You might have missed. And if you made the putt, it doesn't mean that you executed all 3 of those things either. It could mean that you underread it but pulled it, or you underread it but then you hit it too hard or something like that, right? So I agree completely from a data side of things. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned that you played with Taylor Moore years ago. So I'm curious, from what you saw to the player that he seems to be right now, what has changed the most? Where has he made the biggest strides, that sort of thing?
I just think that I think when he got to the big tour, it almost was like, all right, I'm here. What do I have to do now? Instead of just knowing he was already good enough to stay and compete just with what he already had. I think he tried to maybe overwhelm himself with the situation. And that's why I said where he's improved earlier is that he's come in now. No situation looks too big. He just looks like he's comfortable. He looks more like the player that I saw in 16 out there. He played at Arkansas. We had a long time to chat because we had one of the craziest rulings I've ever heard of. We were playing together. We had like a 7-group backup on a par 3. A guy forgot to finish out. So he got to the next green and went to reach in his pocket for like his coin. Some players use like a special coin. I don't know, a quarter or whatever. But he realized that he didn't have it. And he had just got to talking on this par 3, and he had a 1-footer and didn't want to step in somebody's line and walked off. So needless to say, nobody knew what to do. We all stood there for a long time. And it happened to be the day that I was playing with the tournament I was playing with Taylor. So we chatted a lot, obviously knowing the same coaches, the same people. And, when I get that chance, I tend to pick people's brain because you're going to sit there and talk about forever.
Yeah.
So I could see this coming. He drove it so straight and so solid. It not overwhelming length by any means, but definitely hit it far enough to compete, in my opinion, at the time. I don't know. I honestly have no idea what those stats look like now. And then he wedged it. It's not so much that he hit a lot close that week, but it was all proper contact, proper flight. You could tell he maybe wasn't as dialed in as he necessarily always is, but you could just tell how good he really could be.
I love hearing all that because it's kind of the exact same story that the data is telling us. For one thing, the main reason why I was on him, the foundation of who he is as a player, is that he is really good off the tee. And even in the last 20, now 24 rounds, he's gotten a little bit longer and he's hitting it even straighter off the tee. So that's the first sign of really good things to come. He has always been really solid on and around the greens, which kind of gets to the wedge play that you were talking about there. But the biggest strides for him lately, I would say, have also come with the irons. He's kind of turning a weakness into a strength with his irons, particularly the long irons. And it's cool to hear you mention how he wasn't necessarily hitting it close with his wedges, but you could just tell from his wedge play how good he was, because on a PGA Tour level, there's not a lot to fall in love with his wedges. That's actually been kind of one of the things holding him back, and maybe that's the reason why he's not making that many birdies. But last week, one of the things I loved about him was that he was far better at avoiding bogeys than he is at making birdies, which again kind of gets to that tendency to be better with his mid and long irons and the wedge play. But yeah, I think all around his foundation is so solid, and it seems like he's really making kind of rapid strides now in the only areas in which you could have previously said was a weakness. And I kind of think we can draw a lot of parallels there between he and Keith Mitchell for the same reasons. They have this fantastic foundation of being brilliant off the tee. Now, Taylor Moore isn't quite at the level that Keith Mitchell is off the tee. Maybe he'll get there, but you could also then make the case that Taylor Moore has a better starting point on and around the greens than Keith does. And they're both then improving their weaknesses and almost being able to turn them into strengths. And that's why we're seeing them play such a huge part on the tour this year.
And I think a little bit of the correlation of starting to hit it straighter and then therefore hitting it further. Mm-hmm. Some of that is, and just from the player side of that, to talk about that a little bit, is when you start hitting it straight and you start freeing up your golf swing a little bit more because you're hitting it straight, there's a lot less guide. And, it might be minimal, but, you can increase your club head speed by half a mile an hour to a full mile an hour just by freeing it up and letting it go every tee shot. And I think maybe he just gained so much confidence in whatever he's doing right now.
Yep.
You hear a lot of great players that have won on the tour that say they practiced all year to play good 4 weeks, and then they would go back to the drawing board. I mean, that's literally how hard golf is. So, especially if you're not on that Rory, Scheffler, Rahm elite, that super elite level, you you finish. I mean, what Kisner say? Loves making a living, finish 20th, and then we get the right course fit and win. I mean, that's. I think that's gonna. I think Taylor's got a little bit more upside, for majors and to compete in places like that, just because of his driving. But I just think that it was his week, and he took advantage of it, and it's good for him.
There's also more ways than one that what you said there about accuracy and distance kind of working hand in hand is true, because if you're hitting it straight, you're also hitting more fairways and getting more run out than if you're in the rough. And the other thing there is you're also more likely to be hitting the center of the face time and time again. So your contact is better. That's why you're hitting it straighter, and then you're going to hit the ball further. Unfortunately, we have to move on from Taylor Moore because he's not playing this week. There's a lot to talk about from a course fit perspective. And the very first thing that I want to talk about is week after week, when we talk about the course fit, we're talking about how a player's game fits a certain course. This week, I'm not sold that this is more a course fit model than it is like a match play fit model. So we're going to talk a lot about how match play differs from stroke play and how those differences may be explaining what we're seeing in the course fit model, because it's a pretty extreme model where we have a gigantic weight on strokes gained driving accuracy. And again, our proprietary strokes gained driving accuracy metric is capturing a lot of like course management signal, decision-making signal that you're not going to get in percentage of fairways hit or fairways gained. So I think that is certainly a big part of why we're getting so much signal there. But then also no signal whatsoever on approach play, distance is down. And then the other kind of unique thing is that putting is super predictive this week. So I'm curious to hear, first and foremost, let's start with the putting aspect. Do you think that this is about Austin Country Club, or do you think that something about match play just really brings putting to the forefront?
I think it's not even just, and this is going to go along the lines of every stat. It's situational. So it's one of the very few times that you'll ever play golf where you are not playing the golf course. Yep. You're playing your opponent.
Yep.
So your accuracy, I mean, literally everything is going to be super dependent on your situation, right? If you could be 8 under par and be 2 down with 2 to play, you're going to be forced to play more aggressive. And even sometimes that may lead to being more aggressive with the putter, changing or, squeezing your line, hitting it harder. I think that it's just a unique to win at match play is very unique, but it's also very timing based.
Well, the first thing you said there, just out of curiosity, have you read my course fit article yet this week? I know you've been super busy getting back into the country, so I'm kind of guessing you haven't.
I have not.
Beautiful, because this is how I started it. Match play is a completely different beast than stroke play. On a weekly basis, each player is locked in a one-on-one matchup of man versus course. This week only, it's mano a mano. Exactly what you just said.
It's amazing how that works. Yeah, and it's different ways of getting there, right? There's one guy in particular that I've already mentioned once that I can't wait to hear about, because I guarantee everything in your models cannot be pointing to him playing good, and that's Kisner. He's playing maybe the worst golf of his career.
Yeah.
And I saw an interview with him today, and they talked about it, and he also talked about how he was starting to strike it better, just hasn't quite gotten the benefits. So can you combine somebody who might be playing better than the stats say with a perfect situation in the format?
It'll be interesting to see for sure. I know for a fact that I won't be playing him. I also know that has cost me dearly in the past at this tournament, because year after year I fade him, and year after year he punishes me for it. But I will say maybe one of the biggest differences this year is he's not just coming in bad ball striking form, which we could have said a number of years, but in his last 20 rounds, he's even losing strokes on the greens. Like, he has just been downright terrible. So very curious. I'm also very curious to see what his ownership is like on DraftKings, because in the past, it didn't really matter what type of form he was in. He still ended up being popular in this event. Is that going to change given how bad his form is? Only time will tell, but that's going to be one of the main things that I'm looking for this week. I think that the putting signal is about match play. I kind of have this theory that match play like is more likely to show you exactly who you are on the greens. Whereas in a stroke play event, you can show up that week. Maybe you start hot with the putter and you ride that wave throughout the event. Maybe you start cold with the putter and you just struggle to figure it out the whole week if you're a good putter. I think in match play, you're more likely to just play to who you are on the greens. And that's a psychological argument where you kind of know if that's your vulnerability. And of course, it's not the case. This, of course, is a kind of like a confirmation bias type thing. But it always feels like when you're playing match play, if putting is your weakness, guess what's going to happen immediately? First hole, second hole, maybe both of them. You're going to get like a testing 8-foot putt to have the hole. It's just kind of the way it is in match play. And it's one of the most fun things about match play. But I really think that there's also something to be said about so many matches come down to pressure putts, and pressure putts are about confidence. And who is confident over a pressure putt? It's the guy who knows that that's a strength of his. We spend so much time as players trying to manufacture confidence and let confidence come first and then good play come second. But there's nothing like the true confidence of knowing that you've put in the work, that you are that good on the greens, and that you're going to make a ton of those putts, and that you're prepared to make a ton of those putts. And I think that really comes to the forefront in match play because of how many really key putts that you end up having.
Yeah, I mean, and you could look at it because all those putts to tie or even to win, whichever way we want to look at it, you only have 18 holes. It's not 72 shots to go off of, right? So it's a big difference mentally to think. For instance, let's say I go out and hit it to 10 feet twice and miss them both. The guy I'm playing against hits it in the leather once and then chips in once. I'm 2 down, and then all of a sudden I have a bad hole. Although I've played pretty good so far, I have a bad hole. I've got a 7-footer for par, and he's already in for par. If I don't make this 7-footer, I'm 3 down through 3. I mean, you're basically drawing dead at some point, right?
Yeah.
And especially for the guys that don't have the firepower to go make 5 or 6 birdies in a row. It's definitely a mental challenge, and like I said, a lot of it is timing. You'll hear a story of at least one guy that shoots 15 under par for 3 days and doesn't advance, or 3 rounds and doesn't advance. So there's some of that too. It's a combo, but it just always seems like the good match play guys show up in the right situations at the right time, and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, 100% it does. One final point on putting for match play. We've talked a lot on this show about the fact that like we both think that off the tee play is where everything begins. And one of the reasons for that is it's the only aspect of the game that affects everything else. Putting is kind of the opposite, where it's affected by everything else, but it's also the only aspect of the game that has like true finality on a hole, where, as you said, like you can hit a bad tee shot, you can hit a bad second shot, a not so great chip shot, and if you hold the 12-footer for par, all is good in the world. Right. And the same and it's the opposite too. Like if you hit a perfect drive and a beautiful second shot to 6 feet and you miss that putt, now you just have the guy who played the hole terribly but made one key putt. So in match play, you get, I think that finality of putting also really comes to the forefront. And it just all goes to say, like, this is not a major difference that we're talking about in putting. We're talking like 20% on average to 33% in the course fit model. But it's significant when we're just trying to pick players, and particularly because the industry, rightfully so, most of the time says, hey, putting is so volatile. We want to pay more attention to ball striking. This week, and kind of this week only, I'm really, really tuned into, can my guy consistently make the pressure-packed putts?
So the other side of that is Kisner said today, they asked him what his perfect start would be, right? Perfect start to a perfect match. He said, well, I missed the first 2 greens, get it up and down, then chip it in on 3, and I'm 1 up through 3. And it just shows you, because he just thinks mentally the other guy, if he's playing somebody like Zalatoris, who hit it to 6 feet and 12 feet and missed them both, or all 3 times and missed them, and he's played so much better and he's 1 down, and you just – I've been on the losing side of that too, where I'm just like, man, what is going on? Like, how in the world? What's just happened?
We're going to come back to that thought because I think that's an awesome one. Before we get into it, and that's going to take us into the whole discussion of our own personal experience in match play, I want to talk about the lack of predictability or the lack of predictive value, I should say, from approach play this week. Do we even have to explain why that might be the case? Because I have several theories. I want to hear your thoughts on it first.
I think a lot of it starts with the aggression thought. If your opponent's already hit one up there close and is going to make birdie and it's a pretty tough pin, stroke play, you're not worried about that. You're playing your game. If your game says hit it 20 feet right, for whatever reason, the shape or whatever it is, you're just going to hit it over there. Here, you're going to be super aggressive and you may hit it in a really bad spot. And in that case, you just tell the guy to pick it up and we'll go to the next hole. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I think some of it has to do with this golf course, with all the runoffs and the way things the course sets up. I think it's a lot of the reason why like some shorter guys play good here too, is because it just seems like every hole has runoffs going every direction. It's a really cool golf course. It's in one of the top 5 courses I've ever played. It's a really, really, really neat test because it's just so unique. It's got a little bit of everything.
So you kind of just hit on 2 of the 3 explanations that I had in my mind. I definitely think a big one is that the game theory of approach play probably changes more than any other aspect in stroke play versus match play, where you're gaining the most information before you hit your approach shot. So there's that big key. I think the course is also a big reason why, where we also have a bunch of holes here where approach play just like doesn't come into play. You've got a couple holes where you're either trying to drive the green or you're trying to get your drive to run up close to it, where you're then just hitting like a little wedge shot, pitch shot sort of thing. The par 5s, it seems like if you hit a good drive, everyone's just kind of playing to the same area and it just becomes a chip off and a putt off on the hole. So all of those things combine. And then I think the final thing is something that we've talked about a lot on the show, which is when driving accuracy is so important, it's just really difficult for approach play to have any signal, because your ability to take advantage of your iron play, if it's a strength, or your ability to kind of mitigate your weakness from approach play is so dependent on what you do off the tee. If you're consistently putting yourself in bad positions off the tee, you can't take advantage of your strong iron play. You just have no chance of getting it close. And then the flip side there is if you're really good off the tee and you're consistently in great positions, like a Keith Mitchell, you can say, I'm not the best iron player, but I don't need to be. I can take conservative lines here where the difference between a really good shot and a bad shot just isn't going to be that different from a strokes gain perspective. So I kind of think we have 3 really good explanations for it, which makes me feel a little bit more confident in such an extreme result from the course fit model.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is like you said, it does seem like there's a ton of pitching on this golf course.
Yep.
Whether from fairway, rough, it doesn't. You just see if you hit it in the correct spot, you've got a pitch that's usually pretty manageable, and a lot of that has to do with the undulation of the greens too, and the way they set up the golf course. I think that we're going to probably rip on the PGA Tour quite a bit today as we move on. I think one of the few things they get right is the way they set this place up. They move the tees around a lot.
Yep.
They move the pins into places that can be hard but fun, and find a way to make people use their brain to get it close, rather than you can't just just can't go right after it type of deal. So I think that's one of the few places that they do a good job that maybe kind of goes overlooked here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's get back to your Kisner thought and the whole idea of wanting to piss off his opponent, wanting his opponent to be pissed off. It's so cliche, but how much truth is there to wanting to find players who, quote unquote, have that dog in him, or they're mentally like a step above the rest from a psychological perspective?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know. I think there's different ways to do that. I don't think that there's one way that kind of rolls over the other. I mean, Kisner's kind of quiet, always looks pissed off.
Yep.
but never really says anything. Then the other side of that is Hatton, who I like a lot this week. He gets outspoken and angry and not afraid to show emotions. And I think, there's times that if you're playing against a guy like that, you'll be like, what's this idiot doing? What's his problem? And so Hatton's obviously known for those kind of outbursts, but he also knows how to play with it and control it. He's smart about it. The flip side of that is the John Rahm, right? How did you're playing against the best player in the world, and you've seen him throw a fit over hitting it 15 feet with a 5-iron. You're playing against that, and you're like, how good is this guy if he's really getting mad after just hitting a shot to there type of deal?
How much success have you had personally in match play versus stroke play?
So I haven't played an overwhelming number of true match play events, maybe 2 or 3 ever as a pro. That being said, we gambled for a lot of money, which is basically match play, per hole stuff. I mean, that's how I made a living for a couple of years at one point. Great time, very different, but kind of the same idea of the thing that I loved is when we got the momentum is it's just stepping on people's throat when you have the chance. Like, it's just when there's days when you have it and the other person's just reeling and what they do doesn't matter. And then, there's other times where you're like, man, it's going to be a grind today. I got to grind it out and see what happens. So I've played a lot of match play. And I would argue probably for more money than I ever played for in a single professional golf tournament. But it's very different, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And actually it's one of the very first things that I point to whenever I'm asked like what the difference between stroke play and match play is, where in stroke play, no matter how well you have done to any specific point in time prior to the 72nd hole of the tournament, like all the good you have done can be unraveled in one hole. Again, Brian Harmon's 8 when he blades it over the green from the bunker. In match play, you can only lose one hole at a time. So when you have a lead, like let's say you're up 2 or 3 holes, it's so much easier, at least for me, it was a lot easier to get in that mindset of, as you just said, I want to step on this guy's throat and I want to extend this lead, instead of letting like some subconscious part of you creep in that says, let's protect this lead. And then all of a sudden you play overly defensive. You get a little bit nervous of that big mistake and you're more inclined to suddenly make a sloppy bogey, something like that. So I was definitely more comfortable in match play. I won twice as an amateur in match play before I even sniffed contention in stroke play. And then before I don't think I even made a cut in the Philadelphia or the PA Golf Associations before I got to the quarterfinals of the Philadelphia Amateur, which was match play. Like, match play just suited me so well. And I think another part of that was growing up, I was soccer, basketball, baseball, not golf. I didn't play golf until college. I played in the summers in high school, but like for my high school, I was soccer, basketball, baseball. And I think that like playing on adrenaline and letting yourself get fired up for the moment that you do in soccer and basketball and baseball really, really lends itself to match play. Whereas in stroke play, you kind of have to tame that side and calm yourself down. Right. And that was always a difficult thing for me in golf. Like before I was able to become a really good golfer and I was just a good athlete playing golf, was I had to learn how to control that adrenaline and tame it and show more of like the stoic side that Scheffler has. When you look at Scheffler walking off a green, you don't know if he just made birdie or bogey just by looking at his face, looking at his body language. I'm sure that when I was younger and playing golf, you could immediately tell if I had just sunk a 10-footer for birdie or if I had just missed a 6-footer for bogey. And so I think all those things kind of made me a much better match play player than a stroke play player. I don't know if that's still the case because, as you said, like we don't get to play much match play once we become professionals. I played one match play event, I think, in the last like 5 years, and I got to the quarterfinals of that and felt like I could have, maybe should have won. The guy I was playing with, I was up like, I think I was up 2 with 2 to play. And I was even up 2 with 5 to play. And I think he birdied 4 the last 5 in regulation and then birdied the second playoff hole. And that was that. But yeah, I think I was also like on both sides of being a not so great putter for a lot of my career and then became a great putter. And that also like gets to that point that I was talking about earlier, where in match play, you kind of know how good you are at putting, and you just feel that on the green a little bit more than you do in stroke play.
So I always felt, and I know this sounds weird, but I always felt the more the putt meant, the more likely I was to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue that that's probably opposite of the normal person. It's just
I
the
don't
way
know.
that I was comfortable.
I think that that's also partly because you were always a really good putter. And so the more it matters, maybe you could make the argument that, like, the more a putt matters, the more your level of confidence is about how much confidence you have earned and not how much confidence can you manufacture within your own brain.
Yeah, and like I said, that's definitely possible. That definitely, has a likeliness. It's just something that I like. I've always felt like the pressure never mattered, and you could be right. It could be just the inner side of me being like, "Hey, I know I can do this," and so I just focus that in even more. But it just was always like that. It's funny you say. I guess we never really talked about this of you getting such a late start in golf. I never picked up a golf club till I was 16. Yeah. So not a lower middle class family, never played golf. Ended up at a big high school and I basketball, baseball, football had ran its course, and I wasn't going to not compete, and that seemed like the way out. And I had no idea at the time that I would end up, a Division II All-American within the next 5 years. But it's just the way I just always worked pretty hard at it, and I got lucky. I worked at the right stuff. I worked on my short putting and chipping a lot, wedge play a lot. So now looking back at it, I wish I'd have learned how to hit it far. It's a different monster. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I think the other thing here, which is not predictable, is there's no such thing as a real disaster shot. The worst you can do is lose one shot. So, if you'll get a lot more people that'll hit driver down there to 50 yards in this type of deal, knowing that, it might be a little bit more difficult shot to not chunk it in the water or whatever, but knowing that they're still more likely to make birdie from there than they are from, laying back to 130.
Do you think that helps any players more than others? Like guys who are maybe a little bit, let's say, nervous on like high leverage shots, and they will enjoy that freedom to just make a good, confident, aggressive swing?
I mean, I'm sure it does. It would. I mean, just mentally, the sport's so hard. I don't see how it couldn't. I'm trying. Like, I think a prime example. So somebody, you said you're going to lean against people that don't putt very good. But man, for some reason, I'm really, really drawn to Corey Connors this week because of, I think, a lot of what you just said. I think you'll see him play more aggressive and get the ball down there by the green, not being afraid to hit that one really bad chip or anything like that, knowing that it's going to pay off over time, because even if he makes a double, it doesn't really matter as much as it would in a stroke play event.
I want to talk about Siwoo Kim for a second, because one thing that
because you talk about him on this show every week.
Of course, but this is a different thing, because normally when we talk about him, we just say, hey, this guy is phenomenal. I want to ask you specifically, since you do have a connection to Siwoo, do you know if he has put in like considerable effort into kind of changing his approach or course management? Because I think he has this massive reputation as a guy who just goes all out and is not afraid to take the super risky shot, and is going to hit it in the water a lot, but he's also going to make a ton of birdies for you. And the numbers don't bear that out, and they especially don't this year. In the past, he's been fairly similar from a birdie or better perspective as a bogey avoidance perspective. This year, 60th in birdie or better percentage, 18th in bogey avoidance. It was one of the reasons why I was so high on him at the Players. Like, I don't know if that's because he's made a concerted effort to be a little bit more conservative, or if this narrative has just never carried any weight whatsoever.
So I haven't looked into this. I've got no clue, but I would wonder if switching to this putter, if he hasn't improved in short putting, and that's a big deal in the bogey avoidance, more so than anything else. that 7 feet and in range, like we were talking about. That would be, if I had to think about something that what I know about him and the big changes that he made. I think also he's growing up, right? He's getting a little bit older. He's understanding the game more. I mean, people forget how young he is. I mean, he's still a kid. I mean, I think he's the youngest players champion in history. If not really close. But, from what I know, I don't think that much is changing. I think outside of, like I said, maybe just a little growing up and then the change in the putter. I know that him and Danny play a lot together, and Danny's using that long putter too. So I wonder if they're working with somebody together on that stuff.
Maybe. I think one other point with Si Woo that's kind of cool is maybe one of the reasons why he has that sort of narrative around him that he plays a little bit reckless is because he takes driver off the tee so often. But one of the great things that has come from course management systems like the Decade system from Scott Fawcett is the idea that smart and conservative don't always go together. And one of the ways that's most commonly true is hitting more drivers off the tee, particularly if you're like Siwoo Kim and you're really damn accurate with your driver. You should be playing to that strength as much as possible. That's one of the other things that I really loved about Taylor Moore this past week was like on the second hole, for example, most guys were taking long iron, leaving themselves with like 180 to 210 yards, something in that range for their approach shot. Taylor Moore was taking on that water on the right side, driving it down the left, hit the fairway a few times, had a little bit flip wedge in, had a shot from the rough on day 4 that he hit to like 15 feet and almost made a birdie putt. So I think just a kind of a cool anecdotal point that, hey, sometimes what seems like an aggressive decision is just the smart decision. And it's not about being conservative versus being aggressive. It's just about making the right decision.
Yeah, and I think that's never going to be Siwoo's issue is the off the tee stuff being aggressive. I think the places that he gets in trouble is trying to attack some flags when he shouldn't because he knows how good he's hitting it and that kind of stuff. So I think, and a lot of stuff. There's a lot of times there's days that you could be striking it really well and your ball just doesn't fly the distance you think it should or whatever. Just an extra variable with golf. I could segue into the stupid golf ball rollback deal, but we'll say we can. I don't know if we have time for all that. I'll get.
I wanted to check the good shot percentage and some of this approach skill data for Si Woo in line with this discussion, and I can say this season, so since January 1st, his poor shot avoidance with mid irons and long irons has dramatically improved, or actually it's improved a little bit while his good shot percentage has actually gone down. So it does suggest, and actually his long irons both have gone way up. So that first one was mid irons. So we are seeing a little bit of maybe a move towards avoiding poor shots and less about hitting the really great shots that gain a ton of strokes at a time. So to your point, maybe he's just maturing and making a little bit smarter decisions with those irons.
Yeah, I mean, tons of upside, and I hope he competes at the Masters. Is really my goal. I would love to see him play good after he broke his putter there last year.
And I believe we both have outrights on him, futures bets for the Masters. So I'm right there with you, waiting for him there. In these last 20 minutes or so, let's do our best to run through the bracket. Let's talk about each group. If we want to focus on any specific players, we can, but as best we can, let's just go through the entire bracket. We'll pick a final 4. We'll pick a winner. And so let's start with this first group. Scotty Scheffler, Tom Kim, Alex Noren, Davis Riley. What are you thinking here?
Well, so as we go into this, I want everybody to understand, if you're playing DFS, you have an opportunity to be ahead of the field knowing that you can get 8 guys through. So don't pair your guys up if you're going to try to win a DFS GPP. You're just not going to. Somebody's going to get it right.
Do you think it's important to give yourself a chance to have all 4 make the Elite 8 or all 6 make the Elite 8 and then have all 4 of your guys in the final 4? Or do you think that those are such incredibly unlikely outcomes that really the only key is making sure you have a chance to get all 6 through group stage into the Sweet 16. And then from there, like my thought is I don't really care if I have two guys playing each other in the Sweet 16, because while I can't get both of them through, at least I'm guaranteeing that one of those two is going to get through to the Elite Eight.
I'm going to try. I'll probably play this. I know this is crazy, but I'll probably play more DFS this week because I feel like that my theory is better, not because I know more. I'm going to do everything I can as long as it makes sense to make sure my final four can all play each other. That is a huge key to me. If I feel like the brackets work out with the salaries, and I haven't, as you were talking, I haven't had time to really dive into it yet. I'll probably spend most of the morning tomorrow morning doing that. But I think it is important now, especially if you want to try to hit the big one, like, if that's the idea. So that's kind of where I stand on that. Do I think I can't remember. I know I had some success here last year, and I think it was all based around, getting a couple of different of my lineups to get all four through.
I think for me, I don't really care about getting all six into the Elite Eight. I care about getting all six through group stage, and I care about having the chance for all four in the Final Four. But I'm not even sold that last one, having a chance to get all four in the Final Four, is crucial in single entries. In MME, certainly, because we've seen in the past winning teams get all four there. But man, in single entries, like, depending on how much chalk busts and how much chalk doesn't get through the group stage, like, for one thing, you could have a Final Four that is mathematically impossible to have all four of because they might just be too expensive for that to be the case. But also, like, you might be in the top 1% automatically with just two in the Final Four. So you might not need that third or fourth in there just to have a chance already to be in takedown territory, in which case, again, like, wherever you have a conflict where you can't possibly get both guys advancing to the next round, the flip side of that is you're also guaranteeing that somebody does. And teams all around the contest are going to just have guys dropping like flies where they're not getting people to advance. So sometimes it takes a lot less than you think to actually have a chance for a takedown. And in that case, maybe it's better to not restrict yourself to combinations of players that a lot of people are going to have because they're trying to set up the Final Four possibilities.
Well, and I don't disagree at all with that, but like I said, I'm not going to just throw lineups together because they can get all four to the Final Four. So I'm going to take, I'll probably cross some guys out, and then, my player pool might be slightly bigger especially because I'll probably play a lot of like the 3-entry stuff. And then I'll play several different lineups into the single entry stuff. Yeah. So for me, I'm kind of looking at it as I'm going to have an edge on one, but probably going to donate on the other. I just have to have more edges than donations. So I don't disagree, but I think anytime that I can get there, and let's say I have two guys that I have the same feeling on, I'm going to lean towards making sure that I can build to get all four in the Final Four.
I think that's really well said there. All right. Scheffler, Tom Kim, Alex Noren, Davis Riley. What are you thinking?
I mean, so it's going to be hard to not play a lot of these favorites this year, I feel like. Scheffler's playing so good. He went to school down there. He's played there a million times. If I play anybody from up here, it'll be Scheffler, and I won't play anybody else from this group or the group that they play. So I won't play anybody out of 16 either in my DFS stuff. I just can't. I don't know how he gets beat here. I'm not saying he doesn't. Once again, this could be, if he gets beat, it's an attitude thing, not a golf thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, Alex Noren does seem to be a match play specialist, but one thing about it is and actually you can say this about everyone in this group except for Davis Riley, they're all really low volatility players. So while low volatility has certainly helped Alex Noren when he's playing against other guys who are similar caliber, it's not going to help him against Scheffler. You need that extra volatility so that your ceiling can really compete with Scheffler's. I think it's going to be surprising to say the least if Scheffler doesn't come out of this group. I think he is among the highest probabilities to advance of anybody, if not the single highest. Sungjae, Fleetwood, Poston, McNeely from Group 16. What are your thoughts here? Because I have a couple leans from this group, actually.
So I want to start off by saying this is where I think we're going to start seeing in some of these brackets where LIV is really taken away from the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
Because could you imagine these brackets if you had Cam Smith, if you had DJ, if you had those guys, just how much stronger they become? I mean, if we want to talk about match play specialists, you had Patrick Reed in there. I know they're not in great form. Is that because of the LIV deal or whatever, right? But that I just want to get that out there as we go through these brackets, and you kind of see some disparity that maybe we haven't seen in the years past, with each group. I love the next group. I love Fleetwood's form recently. He seems to be in complete control of his golf ball. He kind of embraces the moment. He always looks like he's having a good time. He kind of pops in that area. I haven't really got to dive deep into the pricing to know where JT Poston is, but I would be interested depending on his price, just because he's another one that. What's that?
6,300.
Oh, wow. That seems way too low. He's another guy that's going to go out and have a good time and can embrace the moment and match play and stuff, and would like to see what he has. Once again, this is going to be more about just feel of the player and know their attitude.
So I built like a simulator proxy type of thing. We actually are working on a genuine simulator, and we should have that sometime tomorrow. I will include the results of my hot takes if I have it by then. Otherwise, I'll share everything in the Discord channels, both for bets and for daily fantasy. In the meantime, I have these estimates for like win probability and therefore implied odds. Sungjae and McNeely both pop as good outright bets for me. And for both of them, it's mostly a course fit thing. Like Sungjae is super accurate off the tee. He's a great putter. McNeely, on the other hand, finally gained off the tee again at the Valspar. He's a phenomenal putter. His around the green play has remained really solid even throughout this like really, really difficult stretch of golf for him. His approach play has been really bad. Approach play is not what I care about this week. So I think McNeely might be kind of my, he might be in my hot takes for one thing. And honestly, the strength of Sungjae and the fact that they have to face Scheffler in the next round, most likely, it might be the thing that keeps me from really going after these guys. But Sungjae and McNeely both catching my eye early on. And I wouldn't have guessed that coming into the week, but that's what the numbers are telling me.
And I think it just goes back to my initial point with the first group is like, if I'm gonna be involved in anybody there, it's gonna be Scheffler, and then not any, no chance of playing an opponent in the following round.
Yeah. All right, Group 8: Hovland, Kirk, Si Woo, and Kuchar. What are you thinking here?
I mean, it's hard to argue with the way Hovland's been playing lately.
Yeah.
You just worry about. There's so many pitch shots here. You worry about, will that ever catch up to him? He's a guy that I can't get right ever. So it doesn't, it's kind of the same idea here. I think that if I did play anybody here, it would be Si Woo, just because he's so aggressive off the tee. But like the other two guys too, Kuchar and Kirk, are just so unpredictable of how they can play, because it wouldn't be surprised to see either one of those guys get through here just because of the course fit.
So I am probably not going to make any outright bets until we have the simulator results. If I was going to make one right now, it would be on Si Woo Kim. I have his implied odds at about 54-1, and you can get him at 80-1 right now on either DraftKings or PointsBet. 65 on FanDuel, 60 on Unibet, and 60 on BetRivers within each way. So I'm really intrigued here. I think from a DFS perspective, it's going to be really interesting to see what people are doing in this group and Group 9, because I have a feeling that Jason Day might be one of, if not the most popular plays. on the slate, in which case maybe people just want to avoid Group 8. So whether people want to avoid Group 8 and Siwoo is contrarian in that way, or if people like Hovland and he becomes really popular, Siwoo could end up being one of the absolute best DFS plays if he's contrarian. If he's really popular, then maybe you go elsewhere. Maybe you just eat the Jason Day chalk and find some contrarian guys from other groups, other little pods, if you will. But yeah, I think that's probably my strongest edge right now, at least what I'm showing on the Siwoo Kim outright. Not sure I'm going to make that bet tonight. I may end up doing so. I may end up waiting for the actual simulator results. But moving on to Group 9, Morikawa, Jason Day, Adam Svensson, Victor Perez. Is this all about Morikawa and Day, or do you think Svensson and Perez have chances?
So I loved Perez last week, and I hate the fact that I probably was a week early because I saw somebody else is really high on him today. Somebody that I will look at their stuff. I don't remember who it was. I wish I did. Victor Perez has a lot of talent, and he's been playing good. He just won in Europe not long ago. He doesn't really get the looks that he should. And I'm not totally in love with what Morikawa is doing right now, especially for this golf course.
Yeah.
So if I had to get off of Jason Day here, I could see myself playing Victor Perez at such a cheap price.
Yeah, I'm really off of Morikawa here. And again, it gets back to course fit. Like, his strength is iron play, and iron play just doesn't matter as much in this event. So I love Jason Day here. He's been so good with the putter lately. Of course, that major run of his, like when he was the best player in the world for a sustained amount of time, it was in large part because he was the best putter in the world. He's also now driving the ball more accurately than he has at any point in his career. He's going to be really popular, but I think he's deservingly, I should say he's deserving of that popularity.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Cantlay, Harmon, Kyung-Hoon Lee, and Nick Taylor. What's your thoughts here?
Once again, I think here's another pod of where we lose track of what the live guys would have done, because I love Cantlay here. I think Cantlay's I could see that the one here that I could see getting hot and beating him is Nick Taylor. That being said, Lee played really well last week. He made a lot of birdies. I think he finished 9th with a triple on the first day, if I'm not mistaken. So, I always look for guys that are playing good and maybe they're making too many big numbers. So he could fall in that category. But, man, Cantlay I don't think has ever gotten out of his group here. And he never made the cut at the Players, and he finished 9th. I think, right now his form is just that good.
He is one of, if not the most accurate players in the world off the tee. He's really, really good with his short game. He's a great putter. He's also among the least volatile players in the world. And one of the other interesting things here is, like, Brian Harmon rates pretty well for me, but Harmon is also a pretty low volatility player outside of that 8 he made last week, which I will never get over. As you just mentioned Nick Taylor, like, I had Taylor Moore, Nick Taylor, and Sam Burns in my single entry with 3 missed cuts. I almost cashed with just 3 guys. I was like 1.5 points out of cash. Incredibly frustrating. But anyway, low volatility players going up against Cantlay. Cantlay projects incredibly well. He's actually the highest in my model for the course fit expected strokes gained here. I'm with you. I think Cantlay is a phenomenal play.
And he's hard to play against, too. He takes a long time. He's in his own world. He doesn't talk. He just goes out there. He's not afraid to back off putts. He's very, very difficult to play against. So if you want to look back to the personal, I would be more fed up playing against him than I would. I'd rather hear Rahm yell and cuss all day than play with Cantlay not saying a word and backing off every shot. I
agree with that for sure. Burns, Power, Adam Scott, Adam Hadwin.
I really don't have any thoughts here at all. Once again, I think that this is another situation that if I'm involved in this corner of the bracket, I'm going to have Cantlay because of what he has in the next round. If I had to get involved, I think it would probably be Hadwin, just because I feel like when he gets to making a lot of birdies, he can make a lot of birdies and go beat everybody else there. I'm sure you're going to like Burns because he's highly volatile. But I just don't. I think, once again, here's a point where I'm just going to make my stand on Cantlay and not play anybody from this group either.
So you are right that my lean would be to Burns, but I also think there went my phone. I also think Seamus Power is a good play. We saw him have success here last year. Makes sense given how good he is on and around the greens. The thing with Burns, though, is he has now gained off the tee in 3 straight events, 5 of the last 6. That's kind of like his bugaboo. When he's struggling most of the time, it's because he's just really struggling from an accuracy perspective off the tee. The fact that that's coming around, and we know how damn good this guy is on the greens, like if someone in this group or Cantlay's group is going to take Cantlay down, I think far and away the most likely answer there is that Burns got hot, and just as solid as Cantlay was, he got outplayed by someone making a ton of birdies, and I think that would be Burns.
Don't disagree at all.
Homa, Hideki, Kisner, and Justin Suh.
I mean, this is another. I mean, Homa's far and away the best player right this second in that group. But man, I mean, I probably don't want to play against Kisner, and I don't want to play against Matsuyama, and I don't really know about Suh. Like, I don't really have enough on him. I haven't seen enough of him. I mean, the fact that he's in as the 63 here is crazy to me, because it just doesn't feel like he's done enough to be in this event.
Is there a guy in the field that you feel has a better chance of just adapting that mindset of, I have a 2-stroke lead, I want to step on this guy's throat and end him quickly, than Max Homa?
I mean, he's got to be in the conversation. I think Spieth has some of that mentality too.
Spieth also, though, has that, like, I will snap hook it into the water and give you a hole to get right back into it.
No doubt, 100%. Yeah, but as far as anybody that's not afraid to go bury somebody in that aspect, if they're playing good, I think that once again, it's kind of the same deal. If I make a stand here, it's probably just going to be Homa. That being said, I will have Kisner in the lineup just because he plays. The way he plays golf, and I love the way he plays golf in this event.
So I want to make a distinction here and actually go back to the Burns discussion for a second, because I think there are like basically 2 big things that I'm weighing this week. How likely is the guy to get through his group, and then how likely is he to get to the Final Four? And for a lot of players like Cantlay, being really likely to get through the group is going to also translate to being really likely to get to the Final Four and to win. Burns, I think, has a very good chance of winning for his price, both DFS and in the outright market. His Final Four chances, I think, are pretty good. His chance of getting through is significantly lower than most of the top seeds in the group. Like I have Cantlay, and again, like these are not perfect probabilities based on simulations. They're estimates of what a simulation might say. Cantlay at 56%, Homa 53%, Sam Burns 37%. And then I actually have a Burns and Homa identically likely to get to the Final Four, and I have Burns more likely to win it all. So you kind of get that distinction. And so when we're talking about these players, it's worth noting that when you're actually like making these decisions, whether it's a DFS lineup, whether it's an outright bet, there are more things to consider than just who do we like in this group. And so if you're playing Burns in DFS, for example, it means you have safety elsewhere and you're just looking for someone who can run the table. Whereas if you're playing Homa, maybe it's, I just want this guy to get through and kind of work from there.
And it could be one of the rare situations where you play a Cantlay and a Burns, you know, hoping that they get through the first, knowing you get one of them to the third round. So,
yeah, I like that thought too. Let's go to the next group: Spieth, Lowry, Taylor Montgomery, and Mackenzie Hughes. What are you thinking here?
I mean, the first thing you notice is you have the most volatile short putter that's a great putter with the best putter in the world all in the same group.
Yeah.
I would tend to lean Spieth because I just think his form and being a UT grad and playing down there a lot, even more course knowledge can never hurt. Sometimes I wonder if he kind of gets caught up in the situation of, being back there in his college town. But now with a kid and stuff like that, I think you're going to see a little bit less of that issue. But I mean, if Montgomery's putter gets hot with such a high distinction on putting this week, I like his chances.
I love that you pointed to him because he was one of my first thoughts this week. And in fact, I'm logging into FanDuel right now so I can place this outright because I make him about 45 to 1. We can get him at 100 to 1 on FanDuel. So that's a bet that's going in right now. I'm not sure I've made a bet live on the show before. This is that.
Yeah,
person.
The Siwoo Masters bet I think was live on the show too. So I think that's the only.
I think I made the decision to make that bet, but I'm not sure I actually placed it at that time. I want this one because I'm worried about this number going down because if anybody else is thinking, hey, in match play, we want better putters, then they're going to run to Taylor Montgomery once they see 100 to 1. So I want to make sure that this number doesn't go away from us. And
it's good. And the other reason here too is I don't mind a Montgomery Homa matchup in the next round. Like that's not enough to scare me off of Montgomery. Whereas if it was a Homa Scheffler, or I mean a Montgomery Scheffler type of matchup, it might be a little bit different.
Yeah, true there as well. Okay, I kind of lost my place trying to place this bet. Schauffele, Hoagie, Wise, and Cameron Davis. What are you thinking there?
I somehow lost it too. I lost it altogether. I mean, I can't ever get Schauffele right. I don't. So I don't know. I get no idea what to think. I'm
with you there, by the way. Schauffele is the guy who makes birdie after birdie when I don't play him and can't make a damn thing when I do.
And the other, the interesting fact here is I think this is super wide open. Did you hear any Davis's comments about like finally feeling healthy and all that last week?
Yes.
I don't know how much to take into that. Especially a place where we've got all these drivable par fours and he has the ability to hit it so long. Could he really do something if he truly was going through something we didn't know about? And this is going to, he's all of a sudden turning the corner.
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to believe those quotes because I think there's a lot of confirmation bias there where, like, as a player, if you're playing poorly, you want to be able to explain that with something other than, I just suck right now. Like, you want to be able to say, I've been sick for a long time. I'm not feeling myself, or I've got this injury that's holding me back. And then as soon as you maybe start playing well again, how easy is it to say, hey, I'm finally healthy. Of course I'm playing well again. Instead of saying, I played well for a week. I might suck again next week. So I'm always very, very hesitant to just believe a player and that sort of thing. But at the same time, hey, it's possible.
Yeah. And from there, this is a hard group for me because you really, as the DF side, you don't really want to eat the chalk with Xander there, but the rest of the group is so wide open. There's so many of these groups where I'm just going to completely avoid them. Like, I just don't want any part. I mean, I don't know who else I'd play there. I don't think Hoagie, his iron game is the best part of his game. And it just doesn't seem like this is the spot. That being said, he seems to be one of the more improved players over the last year to be into this spot.
I agree with everything there. I think personally, at least in DFS and betting, I think I'm just going to avoid this group. There's nothing that I feel that strongly about. On the other hand, I do have Schauffele among the most likely to advance. So if we see that Schauffele is like under 10% this week, then I would potentially happily go there if he just fits the rest of my build.
Fitzpatrick, especially with how weak Group 11 seems to be too.
Yeah, true. Fitzpatrick, Thigala, Min Woo, and JJ Spawn.
I mean, Nobody. Once again, I think if you have to play one, it's Fitzpatrick. I can't stand the fact that he putts with the flag in. It makes me not want to play him ever. The more you look at these two together, it makes you just want to go ahead and play Schauffele and be done with it. So,
yeah.
Actually,
that's a really good point too, because I don't have Schauffele at great odds to win, but I do have him with really good odds to get to the Final Four, and that's in large part because of what you just said. Like, if he gets through, he's going to be heavily favored in the next matchup, no matter who he's playing against. And also with Fitzpatrick, who otherwise would be a very good course fit, I'm definitely worried about his neck and the fact that match play is extra golf, right? It's not just 18 holes a day. So it could be the case where you just kind of get lucky that Fitzpatrick is battling a neck injury, and that like maybe you get an easy win out of that.
Yeah, I think if I played anybody else there, it would be Thagala, just because he's not going to be scared of the moment. But I still don't, unless it just comes down to he's the absolute right fit to get like we were talking about, being able to get all 6 into my final 8, or whatever. Then I might be able to I might be able to justify playing it. But outside of that, I don't see it happening.
Any interest in just betting on the Minwoo Lee talent again here?
No. Okay. That rode its course. I don't like the way that this sets up for him. A lot of these places where people are going to be hitting driver to hit it on the green, he's going to have to hit 3-wood. And his driver is the best club, so it's just less times that you're going to have that in his hands. Yeah, I was disappointed I didn't get to be on the show last week after talking about Minwoo the week before and getting shot down by all 3 of you guys. So
I don't know if you watched last week, but you got a big shout out for that one.
But yeah, no, I'm going to move on this week, and like I said, probably another one I'm just going to throw out.
Rory, Keegan, Denny McCarthy, Scott Stallings.
I'm just going to play Hatton in the next group and throw this group out too. I mean, it's like kind of all the same. It's kind of like all the same deal. This is once again where if somebody was playing against DJ or Cam Smith, how much different these groups would be.
I do think there's a chance that Denny goes on a Kisner-like run here, just because he's that damn good with the putter. But it's unfortunate for him that he has to go up against Rory, because a hot putter might not be enough to take down Rory. If he's got his A game. But yeah, Hatton, Henley, Herbert, Ben Griffin. Man, this is on paper, it's a damn cakewalk for Hatton.
Yeah, and he just gets everybody playing not so good. I mean, I guess you could argue Ben Griffin's been playing good lately. That's how he got into the event. But I think Hatton's been playing great. It's a great golf course for him. It's a great format for him. We always talk about first clicks in DFS. That was my first click this week.
Yeah, I can't really argue that. And in fact, I said earlier that Day might be the most popular. I kind of take it back. I think Hatton will be on second thought. And
I'm hoping Rory steals some of that ownership. And once again, this would be another place where if it fits, I could see myself playing Denny and Hatton there to hope to get him through.
Honestly, given how well Rahm and Scheffler have played, given the form of Cantlay and how weak his group is, the fact that Rory would have to play Hatton in the second round could mean that Rory ends up in single-digit ownership, and that would be hard to turn down.
I agree. It's hard when you feel strongly about one player, even though he's going to be chalk. I think there's enough other places that we can make up the chalk here, and I think Denny might be one of them, right? If you got Hatton and Denny, and then, you end up, you're rooting for Denny in the second round over Hatton instead. So,
yeah. All right. Zalatoris, Fox, English, and Putnam.
Man, these groups are crazy. If I play anybody, it'll be Zalatoris, but that's completely against your putting narrative. I think he just has the opportunity to hit it so good that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I agree in this group completely. Hey, guess who I have as the most likely player to advance out of group stage?
Out of what, group 7?
Out of group stage in the entire field.
I mean, my first thought would have been Cantlay.
He is second, I believe.
I feel like this is a trick
Oh,
question.
nope, he's behind Scheffler too, so he's third.
Who's first?
It's not a trick question. It's just a segue.
Cam Young?
No, Tony Finau in the next group.
Finau, gotcha. I think you were going to segue into the caddy change.
Oh, no. We just finished group 7, so we got to talk about group 10 first. Finau, Kitayama, Barank, and Bezadenhout.
Bezadenhout's interesting here, just for the course reasons and kind of the style that he plays.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, like if Finau is that rated that highly to get out, considering the group he'll play in the second round, he would be intriguing as well. Man, Barank is so good, hits it so far. He would be interesting to see on a different golf course. I just don't know that this is the best fit.
Now that you mention it, Finau is also the most likely to get to the Elite 8, and then he kind of falls off getting to the Final 4, but most likely to advance, most likely to get to the Elite 8.
That's really intriguing.
Yeah, it'll also be really interesting to see his ownership, because at 9,800, I wouldn't expect him to get a ton unless people are seeing what we're talking about here, where it's a pretty weak group, and if you get through, Zalatoris is the biggest competition, but Zalatoris isn't a great fit based on his putting. So yeah, it's potentially a nice edge on Finau there for DFS purposes. Ironically, not an outright that I'm at all intrigued to bet. I think he's pretty overpriced in that market.
Yeah, I don't disagree. What, he's probably around the 20-1 mark, same like in the Jason Day area.
I think he was like 20, upper 20s. Let me double check that.
Cool.
You're right. Yeah, it's even worse than I thought. I make him 32.
Gotcha.
All right. We've made it to John Rahm, Horschel, Keith Mitchell, and Ricky Fowler. Is this the group of death, by the way?
I mean, it just shows you how bad this draw is. I probably won't play anybody in here because, one, you don't know what's going to happen. And two, with the Rahm WD last week, I mean, I know people are saying no big deal. Once again, this is more golf, not less golf. Now, they can, after they hit one tee shot here, they get paid. So I think I saw something too. Fowler needs to get to the round of 8. There's some meaning behind it. I don't remember what it was, but I know that was what he was targeting.
Yeah, I think I've seen that too. I kind of wonder if that means much of anything, because no matter what event it is, aren't they going to give Ricky Fowler an exemption?
Yeah, unless it's a major that he had to get into. But also, it should be a really good golf course for him as well.
Yeah.
And
yeah, this group is loaded, and it's a shame, because I think I would have really, really liked Keith Mitchell in basically any other group. And I still might like him as an outright bet, because whoever gets through from this group, their confidence is going to be sky high. Nobody in this group is getting through because they just ran into some bad play. Whoever gets through this group is playing some damn good golf.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Horschel would be a great fit here. I would like him in a lot of these other brackets that we just gone off over, but just once again, just a tough draw.
All right, we finally made it. The guy you want to talk about, Cam Young, new caddy, facing Sepp Straka, Corey Connors, Davis Thompson.
So obviously, I made a comment about how great Cameron Young's driving it. Even there were tee shots he hit that were really good that were ending up just barely in the rough, and I just felt like the eye test was maybe even better than what the stats looked like at times last week. It's an interesting change. I mean, Webb Simpson to Cameron Young. I guess I don't know enough about Cameron Young as a person, but I know Tesori is big into the golf swing as well. Like I know he was Webb's coach for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I don't understand that move, but what do I know? I mean, there's got to be some more to the story. I don't know if this was a Simpson choice, a Tesori choice, or both.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you what you think, because my read was Tesori kind of knew that this was like his chance to get on Cameron Young's bag, or that chance was gone. And it's like, sorry, Webb, you're not about to contend in majors anymore. I got to go find a bag that I'm going to win some majors on.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it was a fact of that. I think that Cameron Young just was like, hey, I'm getting rid of my caddy. I want a new caddy. Are you interested in the job? He probably went home and thought about it. And Webb was like, they talked, and I think they're good enough friends that Webb probably seems like a reasonable dude and was just like, yeah, I understand. Come carry for me 2 more weeks. And then Webb happens to play good those 2 weeks, So there could be some of that. But I would guess it was pretty friendly. But you got a chance to get in a young kid's bag that has the superstar power that he has. I think that was a huge decision.
Yeah. How impactful do you think this will be for Cam Young?
I think in this specific case, it will be really impactful for a lot of course knowledge and understanding how the place plays, because this is his first time there, first time to see it. So I think understanding the situations and stuff here, I think there's going to be some places like he's so talented when he's playing good, it's not going to matter, who he can have a monkey carrying his bag and doesn't have to tell him anything. He's just going to. I just think that he's this place. I think if it was ever the right time, that would really benefit him. Going into here and then Augusta, and it's probably a pretty good move.
Yeah, the timing I definitely think is Augusta related, and I was already going to have difficulty not betting Cam Young at the Masters. Now it's going to be a little bit tougher, but hopefully, honestly, he doesn't do anything too crazy prior to then, so that the number doesn't get too short.
Yeah, and I think the only person that contends here with him is Corey Connors in this group. I like Connors a little bit here. I just, throw away the putting stuff. He played good here last year, and I think he ended up losing to somebody that just shot some kind of stupid low number. I think he shot like 6 or 7 under and lost. So I'm pretty sure it was Connors last year, but I don't remember for sure. That's just off the top of my head. I'll have some interest in him at his price point on DFS for sure.
Agree with that. Anything else before we get out of here?
No, man, I think I'm good. Yeah, I like this week. I know some people don't like it. I like it.
We did forget one thing. We wanted to make fun of the tour for the Valspar caddy bibs getting to choose whatever name you put on the bib. And we were laughing backstage because year after year, it's such a big deal in the broadcast, and everybody loves it. The nicknames are great. Everyone loves it. And then year after year, the tour's like, but only this week. You don't get to have fun in any other week. It's only one per year.
I mean, and it's not like everybody makes fun of themselves and stuff. I mentioned, Max McGreevy put Mr. 89 because he shot 69-89 at the Players.
It makes them so much more personable. You actually get to know the caddies a little bit instead of just like some robot who's carrying the bag. Like, how many caddies do you know the name of other than Greller, Tesori, Bones? Yeah. Like, so many of these guys would be more well known, and some of them have such awesome stories and so easy to root for them. The tour is just so damn good at wasting opportunities to make everything about the product more likable.
And no doubt, like I understand they don't want to do it at the big time events, which I don't blame them. But there's so many of the events that are just in that, like they should do it at the Byron Nelson would be a perfect example, like the same type, but just to draw the extra, like the kind of the events that compare to the same, stature, I guess, as a Valspar.
It would be perfect in the waste management atmosphere. It'd be perfect in the Honda atmosphere around 15 and 17. Like, God, just do it all over the place. It's so great.
Yeah. They're never going to get it all right. And then they're going to roll. Then they're going to roll back the golf ball too. So this ruined the whole sport. No fun allowed.
I would love to transition from this into making fun of how bad Azinger is on the broadcast, but we'll save that for next week. We'll have plenty of time to talk about stuff next week. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This was a really fun show, a really fun event coming up. We'll catch you next time.